Marshall Peak, Chapter 5818, Only Way Out, Marshall Peak in Wind Mist Territory. Mo-Na-Yi led the many well-prepared pseudo-royal lords while the black ink giant spirit god made its move. Despite Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing's efforts, they were outnumbered and overwhelmed. Though they were not yet in dire straits, they could no longer restrain the black ink giant spirit god in such a situation. Once the black ink giant spirit god broke free, the two Ninth Order masters who had held out for thousands of years would have their efforts undone, and the other human race masters would have no chance against such a being. The black ink giant spirit god played a vital role in the Black Ink clan's invasion of the 3,000 worlds previously. Had it not been awakened from the divine spirit ancestral land and charged into the barren territory, forcibly opening a passage connecting to the Wind Mist territory, the human race armies would have had the ability to hold off the Black Ink clan in the barren territory. However, the breach nullified all of the humans' efforts, leading to a grand final battle where many Ninth Order masters sacrificed themselves to preserve hope for the future. This was followed by the mass migration of people in the 3,000 worlds. It could be said that the existence of the Black Ink giant spirit god established the current state of affairs, with the Black Ink clan occupying the 3,000 worlds and human race defending only a dozen or so great territory battlefields. If the Black Ink giant spirit god were to break free now, it would bring disastrous consequences to the human race. Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing had been stationed in Wind Mist territory precisely to prevent such a thing from happening. Previously, the Black Ink clan did not come to bother them because they could not do so as there weren't a lot of top masters on the Black Ink clan side either. In addition, under the premise that the only royal lord was unable to come forward, innate territory lords were unable to cause any commotion against two veteran Ninth Order masters. Besides, the Black Ink giant spirit god was heavily injured in that great battle thousands of years ago and needed time to restore itself. Now that the Black Ink clan had masters emerging one after another, and the Black Ink giant spirit god's injuries had been mostly restored, the time had finally come. World force surged and Black Ink's strength roiled as they clashed, causing the void to shatter. Along with that, some chains that bound the gigantic arm had also broken. The huge yin-yang fish rotated continuously, and Dao strength permeated. While struggling to withstand the joint attack of the many pseudo-royal lords, the two Ninth Order masters attempted to continue restraining the Black Ink giant spirit god. However, their strength was limited. How could they hold on in such a situation? Wu Qing roared, and Xiao Xiao yelled. The two had an overwhelming presence, and they would never compromise even when facing adversity, just like the many human old ancestors who had sacrificed themselves for the greater good in the barren territory years ago. Mo-Na-Yi only laughed. The situation is as such, why bother struggling? I have always admired the strength of the human race, but my arrival today is just to give you both a dignified death. Meanwhile, in the barren territory, the Black Ink giant spirit god roared in anger. You think you can restrain this supreme one? Break. As the roar echoed, the arm of the Black Ink giant spirit god suddenly expanded, unleashing a violent surge of power. The chains that had been struggling to hold on could no longer bear the immense pressure and shattered into twinkling fragments of light, scattering in all directions. With the secret technique broken, Wu Qing and Xiao Xiao both grunted, clearly suffering from some backlash. On the other hand, Mo-Na-Yi stood outside the battle ring, enjoying the despair in the eyes of these two Ninth Order masters. 4 years, the Black Ink clan had not gained many advantages in their battles against the human race, but after this victory, those humans who continued to resist would finally understand who the true masters of the universe were. Hong long long. With a resounding boom, the Black Ink giant spirit god finally broke free after being restrained for thousands of years. To the human race, this was surely a great calamity. The despair in the eyes of Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing grew even more intense as Mo-Na-Yi coldly said, "Don't even think about escaping. This space has already been sealed off, and with your strength alone, you won't be able to get away." He had even brought the grand array that could be used to deal with Yang Kai, fearing that these two Ninth Order masters would try to escape. It was difficult to find an opportunity to ambush two Ninth Order masters at once, and if they managed to escape, it would be a huge problem for the Black Ink clan. After Mo-Na-Yi finished speaking, Wu Qing charged at him with his halberd, intending to execute the leader of the enemies to intimidate his troops. However, as soon as he moved, he was stopped by a Three Fortunes formations and became trapped in a bitter battle, unable to escape. Seeing this, Mo Na Yi smirked in mockery. The trap has already been sprung, now it is up to you both to decide what to do next. He thought to himself, hoping that they wouldn't disappoint him. At that moment, Xiao Xiao suddenly shouted, "Let's go." The yin-yang fish suddenly became turbulent and many pseudo-royal lords were violently pushed back by the overwhelming force. Xiao Xiao then charged straight up, followed closely behind by Wu Qing with his halberd. The direction they were heading was the same as the spot where the black ink giant spirit god had retreated, a crack leading to the barren territory. Ha! Mo Na Yi couldn't help but snort, his expression showing no surprise as if he had expected this all along. In fact, he had already anticipated how the two Ninth Order Masters would respond to the situation. This strength of void was completely sealed off, and with so many pseudo-royal lords surrounding them and Mo Na Yi himself presiding over the situation, the two Ninth Order Masters simply did not have the strength to fight back. Continuing to engage in battle would only result in their inevitable defeat and demise. However, Mo Na Yi was not willing to take on too much risk or suffer heavy losses. He was confident that he could kill the two Ninth Order Masters here, but he didn't know how much it would cost him. If the two of them abandoned all hope of survival and fought to achieve mutual destruction, the pseudo-royal lords would surely suffer heavy casualties. Even he might not escape intact. With such concerns in mind, he couldn't force them too hard or else it would be too risky. As someone who had been in charge of the Black Ink clan's military affairs for so many years, Mo Na Yi knew that sometimes giving the enemy hope was the best way to corner them and reduce one's own losses. Although the black ink giant spirit god had been freed, and the arm that had been chained for thousands of years had been retrieved, the opening in the boundary wall connecting the barren territory and wind mist territory had long stabilized and did not disappear. In this dire situation, the two Ninth Order Masters only had one way out, to charge into the barren territory. Everything is going according to plan. In the barren territory, the black ink giant spirit god had been fully freed. If the two human masters rashly charged in, there would surely be no good outcome. By that time, Mo Na Yi would lead his pseudo-royal lords to pincer them with the assistance of the black ink giant spirit god, a way simpler way to take them down rather than fighting to their death here in the wind mist territory. The two Ninth Order Masters knew what they were about to face, but under the current circumstances, they did not have another choice. Staying here meant certain death as they would be worn down and killed sooner or later. So, charging into the barren territory was their only chance to snatch life from the gates of death. The arm of the black ink giant spirit god had already been retrieved, and Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing had also charged into the passage and disappeared. The many pseudo-royal lords followed closely behind, ready to charge in, but were suddenly stopped by Mo Na Yi. Wait. The pseudo-royal lords immediately paused their movements. Mo Na Yi remained calm, silently waiting and feeling the intense fluctuations of battle coming from the other end of the passage that was occasionally mixed with the muffled groans of Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing. It was clear that they had suffered losses at the black ink giant spirit god's hands. Mo Na Yi sneered in his heart, so what if you're a Ninth Order Master? You're nothing in the face of our black ink giant spirit god. Previously, when the black ink giant spirit god appeared on the battlefield, the human race had needed to mobilize at least 10 Ninth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters to simply contain it. But currently, with only the two of them, how could Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing be opponents of the black ink giant spirit god? Charge! Mo Na Yi commanded his subordinates soon after. The reason the pseudo-royal lords and the others had to wait was to prevent the two Ninth Order Masters from ambushing them on the other side of the passage. If they did, it would be a surprise attack that could deal them serious damage. Now that they had confirmed that the two had fully charged into the barren territory, they didn't need to wait any longer. Besides, Mo Na Yi was also worried that if they followed too late, the two humans might have a chance to escape. Although the barren territory had some defenses in place, there were not enough masters to provide comprehensive coverage. Furthermore, though the black ink giant spirit god was powerful, it might not be able to stop the two Ninth Order Masters if they were determined to escape. The pseudo-royal lords rushed into the passageway, with Mo Na Yi following behind. Soon after, the many black ink clansmen entered the barren territory. Looking up, Mo-Na-Yi saw the imposing black ink giant spirit god standing in place as its two massive hands reached out to grab at the two Ninth Order masters who were frantically flying around, trying to avoid its grasp. Although the black ink giant spirit god occasionally threw a punch that didn't land, the shockwaves alone were enough to shatter the void and send the Ninth Order masters tumbling. Watching this scene quietly, Mo-Na-Yi ordered, "Set up the array and kill them both." The two Ninth Order masters were at a dead end. With the black ink giant spirit god here, along with a royal lord and many pseudo-royal lords working together, there was no way they could survive. It was time to reap the rewards of their victory. Suddenly, Mo-Na-Yi felt a bit disheartened. If the one we were targeting was Yang Kai, what would he do to break out of this situation? He couldn't think of any effective methods to break through such a defense, except to avoid entering the barren territory altogether and to simply fight in the wind mist territory until one side gave in, but that would likely result in losses for his side. It was a shame that the killing star was now certainly trapped in the universe furnace. He might have already perished inside, or he might have to wait until the next time the universe furnace opened to escape. However, who knew how many years it would take for the next opening? By then, the entire universe would belong to the Black Ink clan. As Mo-Na-Yi was lost in thought, his expression suddenly changed as he looked towards Xiao Xiao, who was flying about frantically. Xiao Xiao had suddenly looked towards him too, and when they locked eyes, Xiao Xiao shouted, "Mo-Na-Yi, Yang Kai left something for the Black Ink clan as a gift, please accept it." With that, she tossed a round bead towards him. There was no fluctuation of power, and it didn't seem to be an artifact. In fact, it looked like a simple pebble that could be found anywhere in any universe world. But when Xiao Xiao threw out that bead, Mo-Na-Yi felt a sense of imminent crisis and a chill shot up his spine from the tips of his toes to the top of his head. Martial Peak. Martial Peak, Chapter 58-19, Hidden Hand, Martial Peak. The assault of the Black Ink giant spirit god was simple yet violent, making it difficult for even two Ninth Order masters to contend with. It was as the saying went, one great force surpasses 10 masters. Amidst the chaos, Xiao Xiao threw an object towards the pseudo-royal lords and royal lord. In that instant, Mo-Na-Yi felt a sense of danger as he heard the name Yang Kai ringing in his ears. Over the years, he had engaged in many battles with Yang Kai but never gained an advantage. In fact, even when he had the upper hand in their last two encounters and was on the verge of killing him, Yang Kai always managed to turn the tables on him. In the previous encounter, the Black Ink clan lost many innate territory lords to Yang Kai, and in their last battle, a true royal lord and several pseudo-royal lords had fallen at his hand. It could be said that Yang Kai had long since become Mo-Na-Yi's heart demon. When Mo-Na-Yi learned that Yang Kai was trapped in the universe furnace and had no chance of escaping, he felt pity but also joy as he would no longer have to face that killing star. However, he never expected to face a hidden hand left behind by Yang Kai at this critical moment. He didn't know what the bead thrown by Xiao Xiao was, but anything related to Yang Kai couldn't be taken lightly. The little round bead thrown by Xiao Xiao came at an extremely high speed, almost hitting them before Xiao Xiao finished speaking, but was immediately punched furiously by a pseudo-royal lord. "Don't!" Mo-Na-Yi roared, but it was too late. Under the violent impact, the bead momentarily froze before quickly breaking through the force impacting it and came flying towards them again. The pseudo-royal lord who had attacked felt something unusual about the bead the moment his black ink strength made contact. Though others might not have been able to perceive its mystery, he could feel that Xiao Xiao's bead was unexpectedly heavy, and when combined with the mysterious power from a Ninth Order master, he was unable to block it with his punch. The next instant, the round bead closed in, and although the pseudo-royal lord heard Mo-Na-Yi, he was too focused on the sense of danger that suddenly and inexplicably overwhelmed him. He did not care anymore, so he punched out again with all his strength. With a loud bang, the void shook and the pseudo-royal lord grunted as he was sent flying. At the same time, the bead finally shattered. It was not some sturdy artifact, so it couldn't withstand the full force of a pseudo-royal lord's attack. At the moment when the bead shattered, space principles surged wildly. From the remnants of the shattered bead, large universe fragments appeared and shot in all directions, causing chaos among the Black Ink clan. An entire universe world. Mo-Na-Yi exclaimed in a low voice, his eyes full of shock. Only now did he realize that the bead was not some simple stone, but rather a universe world refined into an unremarkable appearance through some profound means. Combined with Xiao Xiao's words earlier, Mo Na Yi immediately thought of Yang Kai. In this world, who else could achieve such a fantastic feat but Yang Kai? Moreover, many years ago, he had heard rumors that a human had refined and saved many universe worlds before the Black Ink clan's army arrived. Many of the universe worlds, which had been lingering in the void for countless years, had disappeared abruptly. Some Black Ink disciples also revealed related information that Yang Kai had the means to refine universe worlds into tiny beads, apparently called sealed world beads or world beads. Putting all the pieces of information together, Mo Na Yi immediately understood that this was a world bead that Yang Kai had refined. Although the pseudo-royal lord was powerful and could easily shatter a world bead with his strength, he had suffered some injuries, mainly because he had not expected such a small thing to have such tremendous weight behind it. But what could a trivial world bead do to the Black Ink clan? Was this the gift that Yang Kai had left? If so, that was too disappointing. Mo Na Yi remained tense because he knew that things could not be that simple. While resisting the impact of those shattered universe fragments, he calmly observed his surroundings. The next moment, Mo Na Yi caught a glimpse of something horrifying, causing his expression to change dramatically. In his field of vision, a huge universe fragment that covered the sky suddenly exuded an extremely terrifying aura. As the aura emerged, a figure slowly rose up in the void. The figure was majestic and towering, with a bald head that shone like the sun. Despite its ferocious appearance, there was a strange simplicity in its expression. It seemed to have just woken up from a deep sleep, and its bleary eyes were still mixed with a hint of confusion and sleepiness. It also had a somewhat displeased expression, just like anyone who was forcibly awakened from their sleep would feel. Mo Na Yi's soul trembled as he exclaimed, "A giant spirit god. How could there be a giant spirit god? How could there be a giant spirit god inside?" He immediately realized that a giant spirit god had been sealed within Xiao Xiao's world bead, and he finally understood that the world bead was not the gift from Yang Kai to the Black Ink clan, but rather this giant spirit god was. Although the giant spirit god seemed to have just awakened from a deep sleep, no one dared to underestimate its power. The Black Ink giant spirit gods were created based on this unique race. Mo had to split parts of his soul to create them. Thus, each Black Ink giant spirit god could be seen as a soul clone of Mo. In the whole universe, there was no race more powerful than the giant spirit god clan, and only supreme masters like Mo could surpass them. The Black Ink clan had always considered the restrained Black Ink giant spirit god their strongest hidden hand. They had ignored it for many years, not because they had forgotten about it, but because they were waiting for the right opportunity to release it. Now that the opportunity had come, Mo Na Yi led many pseudo-royal lords to besiege the two Ninth Order masters in Wind Mist territory, taking the chance to help the Black Ink giant spirit god break free. After they succeeded, the Black Ink clan would have the power and strength to eradicate the human race. This Black Ink giant spirit god was their greatest trump card, and the human race would ultimately find it impossible to contend with. But never had they imagined that Yang Kai had a way to deal with the Black Ink clan's long-preserved hidden hand. Worse, he clearly discovered this card long ago. Mo Na Yi did not know when Yang Kai had given the world bead to Xiao Xiao, but it was definitely not recently. Perhaps 1,000 years ago, or maybe 2,000 years ago, or even earlier. Did Yang Kai predict this day even back then? Mo Na Yi quickly dismissed this idea. Although Yang Kai was powerful and agile, it was impossible for him to know everything beforehand. He must have given the world bead containing the sealed giant spirit god to Xiao Xiao just to guard against the day the Black Ink giant spirit god would escape. He knew the Black Ink giant spirit god would surely break free one day, and in this universe, only a true giant spirit god could stand against it. Though there was clearly some forethought put into this, the events of today were more coincidence than careful planning. Realizing this, Mo Na Yi was filled with bitterness. He thought that Yang Kai was trapped in the universe furnace and he would never have to deal with this powerful enemy again, but who would have thought that he had still fallen into Yang Kai's trap even though Yang Kai was not even here anymore? This killing star was indeed his lifelong enemy. With his thoughts in chaos, Mo Na Yi heard Xiao Xiao's explosive shout, "RDA, kill the enemy." She had learned the name of the giant spirit god from young Kai himself. In the world today, there were only two known giant spirit gods left, Rda and Ra. Their names were simple and they were easy to tell apart. Rda was bald, while Ra had a tuft of baby hair on his head. Back when the Black Ink clan army breached the no-return pass, the human race was promptly assisted by Ra, who was wandering around the 3,000 worlds. Somehow, Ra seemed to know what was happening and stormed into the barren territory to face off against the Black Ink giant spirit god. After the human army suffered a crushing defeat, they withdrew, but Ra stayed behind. For thousands of years, he had been locked in battle with another Black Ink giant spirit god, a battle so intense that it literally shattered space wherever they went. Today, the barren territory was home to the giant spirit god and the Black Ink giant spirit god. In truth, the human race wanted to locate Rda earlier, but unfortunately, they had never been able to determine his whereabouts and the matter was eventually left unresolved. It wasn't until young Kai went out searching for traces of the first primordial light that he found Rda, sleeping in one of the dead universe worlds. Rda must have been eating well as he was sleeping so soundly that he was totally unaware of what was going on in the outside world. That time, young Kai had traversed almost the entire 3,000 worlds, personally investigating each universe world. However, instead of immediately awakening Rda after finding him, he first refined the entire universe world to leave as a hidden hand. Then, when he went to visit Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing, he quietly handed the world bead over to Xiao Xiao to keep until the day they needed Rda's power to counter the Black Ink giant spirit god. As Mo Na predicted, young Kai knew that the day would come when the Black Ink giant spirit god would break free, and the Black Ink clan undoubtedly used it as a trump card. When that day came, Xiao Xiao could summon the world bead and awaken Rda. No matter what the Black Ink clan was planning, Rda's appearance would surely catch them off guard. It was just that young Kai would never expect that the sleepy Rda would react slowly even after being forcibly awakened. Though, to be fair, this guy had always been a simpleton. It was only after Xiao Xiao shouted that Rda gradually focused his sleepy eyes, rubbed his bald head, turned his neck slowly, and looked around. Upon seeing the black figures around him, his already unpleasant mood became much worse. "Black Ink clan," Rda exclaimed, his voice like thunder, shaking the void all around him. With an irritated look, he shouted, "Little friend told Rda to kill all from the Black Ink clan." The little friend he was referring to was undoubtedly young Kai. While he was sleeping in the world bead, he repeatedly heard young Kai's voice echoing in his ears, telling him to kill all from the Black Ink clan after he woke up. Despite being annoyed, Rda remembered those words. After waking up from his thousands of years of sleep, Rda finally saw them and began slowly striding towards the largest cluster of Black Ink clansmen. Little friend said to kill, so I should kill. Even if young Kai had not encouraged Rda, there was already an irreconcilable enmity between the giant spirit god clan and the Black Ink clan, so Rda would have killed them regardless. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 5820, Nothing related to young Kai is ever good. Marshall Peak. The giant spirit god clan had very few clansmen, but each one was incredibly powerful. They were practically the strongest beings in the universe, with even the divine spirits like the dragons and phoenixes not being their match. Fortunately, the giant spirit god clan had a gentle, almost childlike nature and never actively sought out trouble. Otherwise, if they were as destructive as the Black Ink clan, the 3,000 worlds would have been destroyed by them long ago. This race fed on dead universe worlds and had the unique ability to sense the location of dying universe worlds from afar. Young Kai and Rda first met during the Star Boundaries crisis. During the Great Battle with Great Demon God Mo Sheng, the Star Boundary was brought to the brink of collapse. Rda arrived and slept outside the Star Boundary, waiting for an opportunity to eat it. It was from Rda that young Kai learned how to save the Star Boundary. Later, young Kai broke free from the shackles of the Star Boundary and went to the Grand Ancient Ruins Boundary in the 3,000 worlds to obtain a root of the World Tree, which he then planted in the Star Boundary to bring it back to life. Rda then disappeared without a trace, but it was thanks to his guidance that the Star Boundary was saved. Without Rda telling him to search for the World Tree, young Kai would not have been able to save the dying Star Boundary. Years later, Yang Kai discovered traces of a giant spirit god in the void, thinking it was RDA, but it turned out to be another giant spirit god named R. Under R's guidance, he entered the chaotic dead territory and met Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan. Because giant spirit gods fed on dead universe worlds, they had an irreconcilable enmity with the Black Ink clan since ancient times. If the dead universe worlds were like pieces of meat for the giant spirit gods, then the universe worlds corrupted by Black Ink strength were like disgusting rotten flesh. The giant spirit gods would never feed on such filth. The existence of the Black Ink clan was naturally in opposition to the giant spirit gods. It was because of this that Ara rushed over to assist the humans in the barren territory to fight against the Black Ink giant spirit god. Otherwise, with the giant spirit god's gentle character, how would they easily start a fight with another creature? In the late ancient era, during the Great War between the Black Ink clan and the human race, the giant spirit gods were also active. Both RDA and RR had even participated in the war against the Black Ink clan back then. At that time, there were more than these two giant spirit gods, but after the endless fighting that lasted for countless years, the already small number of giant spirit god clan members was reduced to 2. Many years later, RDA woke up from his slumber and saw the only race that the giant spirit god deeply hated, which caused his terrifying aura to sweep across half the barren territory. He took big steps forward, and although his movements were clumsy, he was extremely fast. He reached out his gigantic hand and grabbed at the gathering place of the pseudo-royal lords. The hand was so big that it seemed to cover the entire sky, and the pseudo-royal lords were all shocked as they quickly tried to flee in all directions. However, there was an extremely mysterious force surging in the area covered by the giant hand that stirred the void, leaving many pseudo-royal lords staggering despite RDA missing the target. Without giving them a moment to catch their breath, another gigantic hand slapped down. The next moment, a miserable cry resounded as a pseudo-royal lord who could not dodge in time was instantly smashed into paste, exploding into a blood mist from which thick Black Ink strength dissipated. The survivors were terrified at the sight as even a true royal lord like Mo'na had to flee desperately under the wild attacks of the giant spirit god. Such power was simply impossible for any royal lord to resist, and he finally understood the pressure that the two Ninth Order Masters faced when confronting the Black Ink giant spirit god. RDA shouted as he slapped his hands down one after another, causing chaos throughout the entire barren territory. Many pseudo-royal lords were unable to avoid being hit either directly or by the shockwaves of these attacks. As strong as the pseudo-royal lords were, they could not withstand the might of a giant spirit god. Within moments, 3 pseudo-royal lords died, and several more were injured to the extent that they were coughing up blood non-stop. Mo'na was also grazed by the giant palm and his vitality fluctuated wildly as his heart filled with fear. Even in this situation though, he continued to give orders, commanding the rest to form battle formations and kill the enemy. However, even after the pseudo-royal lords formed battle formations, they were no match for the giant spirit god. Often, before they had a chance to fight back, the battle formation was broken and they were left dazed from the crude yet overwhelming power used against them. Mo'na felt a chill all over his body as he commanded the battle as he cursed Yang Kai in his heart. How malicious can he be to have this hidden hand and not show it after all this time? Over the years, nothing related to Yang Kai was ever a good thing. Mo'na couldn't help but think back to the great battle between the Ninth Order Masters and the Black Ink giant spirit god. The Ninth Order Masters were not necessarily stronger than the Black Ink giant spirit god, but with the cooperation of a dozen of them, they were still somewhat able to hold it back. Just how much courage and determination did that take? At this moment, if there were more royal lords cooperating with him, Mo'na would have had the confidence to contain this giant spirit god, but there were only 2. Besides, Mo was currently stationed at the no-return pass, unable to come to the rescue, so what could Mo'na accomplish alone? Although there were enough pseudo-royal lords, they were ultimately not true royal lords, so Mo'na did not expect much from them. Originally, victory seemed certain for the Black Ink clan after forcing Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing into the barren territory. However, they had turned the tables by using their previously displayed despair to trick their opponents into letting their guard down. The situation became awkward as the Black Ink giant spirit god struggled to quickly kill the 2 Ninth Order Masters, while pseudo-royal lords were being decimated. If this continued, their situation would only become worse and there would be more casualties. Mo-Na-Yi had no choice but to shout loudly, "Supreme One." He could only beg the Black Ink Giant Spirit God for assistance. However, the Black Ink Giant Spirit God ignored him even after hearing this cry, treating the two Ninth Order Masters like annoying insects buzzing around him. It frustrated the Black Ink Giant Spirit God who sought to crush them. In truth, Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing were in a precarious state. Though the pseudo-royal lords were struggling to withstand the aftermath of the Giant Spirit God's attacks, Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing also couldn't hold out for long despite being stronger. However, the two of them had no intention of fleeing. They gritted their teeth and continued to fight back against the Black Ink Giant Spirit God, provoking its anger and preventing it from helping the pseudo-royal lords. After a while, another pseudo-royal lord's aura was extinguished. He had failed to avoid a fierce attack from RDA and was instantly obliterated. As a result, 4 pseudo-royal lords from the Black Ink clan had fallen, while all the others were now heavily injured. Both the Giant Spirit God and the Black Ink Giant Spirit God were enormous and seemingly clumsy in their movements, but every single blow they unleashed contained tremendous power that could destroy the heavens and earth. It was impossible to completely avoid such attacks. Perhaps after killing some enemies, RDA's sleep-addled head became clearer. At a certain moment, after sweeping his palm around, he stopped in his tracks and stared in one direction. "Big guy." He finally saw the Black Ink Giant Spirit God. Enraged, his eyes immediately erupted with boundless fury towards that entity that looked almost identical in appearance and size but was completely different in nature. He seemed to have a great deal of hatred towards this being. In an instant, he abandoned the numerous pseudo-royal lords and Mo-Na-Yi, instead taking large strides towards the Black Ink Giant Spirit God. The many pseudo-royal lords, who had been teetering on the edge of life and death, breathed a collective sigh of relief. In that direction, the Black Ink Giant Spirit God naturally sensed the approaching foe and with a broad wave of his arm sent Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing flying before quickly turning around and striding towards RDA. The two colossal creatures charged each other, their identical size and aura making them seem like a mirror reflection in the void, except that one of them was surrounded by Black Ink strength. This was a battle between the most powerful beings in the universe, one in which no one could interfere. On the other side, many pseudo-royal lords wore expressions of relief, glad to have survived that encounter. Fortunately, the Giant Spirit God discovered the Black Ink Clan Giant Spirit God's presence. Otherwise, none of them knew how many more of them would have died. Mo-Na-Yi felt extremely bitter. In the end, it wasn't their own strongest master who saved them, but the enemy who drew the Supreme One's attention. In the blink of an eye, the two colossal creatures closed in on each other, seeming to have a telepathic connection as they both threw punches at the same time. When their fists collided, space shattered. The silent collision created visible shockwaves that spread out in all directions from the point of impact. The fallout was so intense and far-reaching that they swept up the injured pseudo-royal lords, causing them to tumble and flip over. Even Mo-Na-Yi had a hard time standing his ground. This was not the first time this level of battle was fought in the Barren Territory. Back then, and another Black Ink Giant Spirit God fought for nearly 1,000 years, with each clash being incredibly terrifying, causing chaos all around them. It wasn't until they grappled each other's limbs, making it impossible for either to move easily, that the 1,000-year-long battle reached a stalemate. Even now, these two giant spirit gods were entangled with each other somewhere in the Barren Territory's void, and no one knew how long this fight would last. After another violent collision, Mo-Na-Yi felt like he could barely stand still as he was too close to the battlefield of these two supreme masters, so the aftermath he suffered was naturally more intense. Suddenly thinking of something, he became alert and muttered, "Where are Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing?" Before this, Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing were entangled with the Black Ink Giant Spirit God, but now that the Giant Spirit God had his eyes on the Black Ink Giant Spirit God, Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing were nowhere to be found. "Watch out for sneak attacks," Mo-Na-Yi hastily shouted, but just as he finished his sentence, a desperate scream came from nearby. He turned his head to see a fleeting figure. It was a pseudo-royal lord falling into a rapidly rotating yin-yang fish, unable to escape as the yin-yang power ground him up. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 58-21, Complete Defeat, Marshall Peak. In just a short moment, the pseudo-royal lord trapped in the yin-yang fish lost all vitality and died on the spot. As the attention of the Black Ink clan's many masters was drawn over, Wu Qing's figure appeared like a ghost on the other side of the battlefield. With world force surging, he aimed his halberd at a chosen target. The pseudo-royal lord he selected had an unstable aura and was clearly injured. Having barely escaped from the attack of the giant spirit god, this pseudo-royal lord didn't even sense this silent ambush. It wasn't until the danger was upon him that he noticed, but it was already too late. Unable to mount a proper defense, he presented an opportunity that Wu Qing seized, and with a single strike, the halberd split him in half. Black blood gushed out, and Black Ink's strength dissipated. The two Ninth Order masters who just escaped were like tigers in a flock of sheep, seeking out targets to slaughter. The powers of yin and yang surged, and the long halberd swept out endless sharp edges. Mo Na was furious as he had brought a considerable number of pseudo-royal lords, but he had already lost 6, with 4 killed by the giant spirit god earlier while 2 more were brought down by Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing in such a short time. These pseudo-royal lords were the backbone of the Black Ink clan's forces against the humans, and though they had not suffered significant losses on the real battlefield, significant casualties had been taken here, causing Mo Na great distress. This operation was supposed to be foolproof. If they had succeeded, not only would they have killed 2 Ninth Order masters, but they would also have assisted the Black Ink giant spirit god in breaking free from its bindings, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Unfortunately, this seemingly perfect plan had been blown apart after Yang Kai's hidden hand was revealed. Mo Na roared in anger and charged towards Wu Qing. After the initial panic, the pseudo-royal lords hastily formed battle formations against the 2 Ninth Order masters and barely managed to hold their ground. Upon noticing Mo Na's movements, Wu Qing immediately flew towards Xiao Xiao's position, ignoring Mo Na's attack from behind. With a fierce blow, he pierced through another pseudo-royal lord who was suppressed by Xiao Xiao. Xiao Xiao understood Wu Qing's intention and fully cooperated. Grand Dao strength surged, suppressing the pseudo-royal lord and rendering him immobile. With 2 Ninth Order masters joining forces, the lone pseudo-royal lord was no match at all. In a state of extreme shock, he could only watch as Wu Qing pierced him with a single strike. At the same time, Wu Qing's figure shook as he spurted fresh blood. It was a result of Mo Na's attack. The pseudo-royal lords, who had just regained their footing, gathered together in their battle formations from all directions while Mo Na also charged over with haste. On the other hand, Xiao Xiao grabbed Wu Qing's shoulder as the yin-yang fish rolled back, wrapping around them while they withstood the relentless attacks of their enemies as they carved a bloody path out. Powerful secret techniques bombarded them, but they were all dissolved by the yin-yang fish. The shield Xiao Xiao was manipulating trembled, costing her a great deal of energy to maintain. After a moment, the chaotic battle suddenly calmed down as the 2 sides stood across from each other in the void, facing off from afar. In the eerie and quiet stalemate, only the fierce residual waves of the 2 giant spirit gods battling each other in the distance could be felt. Xiao Xiao's chest heaved, and Wu Qing's face was pale with a hint of fresh blood at the corner of his mouth. On the opposite side, Mo Na and the pseudo-royal lords looked at them coldly with eyes full of resentment and anger. However, even with all the rage they felt, it was useless in this situation. Their plan had completely failed. Although the Black Ink giant spirit god had managed to escape, the humans gained another giant spirit god to assist them. These 2 were now mutually restraining each other, making the Black Ink clan's plan to use the Black Ink giant spirit god to sweep away the human race completely useless. In addition, the 2 Ninth Order masters were also not dead and could escape at any time because their location was right at the entrance to the Wind Mist territory passage. In the end, the Black Ink giant spirit god was still contained, while the 2 Ninth Order Open Heaven Realm masters were now free. Mo Na clenched his fists tightly as his heart bled. Originally, in terms of royal lords and Ninth Order masters, the Black Ink clan was inferior to the human race. The Black Ink clan only had 2 royal lords left, while the humans had 4 available in the 3,000 worlds. The advantage that the Black Ink clan could occupy was mainly due to the many pseudo-royal lords on their side. Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing had been trapped in wind mist territory for so many years, so though they could restrain the black ink giant spirit god, they were of no use on the battlefield. But now, they were freed. On the main battlefield, there would be 2 more human armies led by veteran Ninth Order masters. This was a disaster for the Black Ink clan. And the reason for this outcome was a hidden hand left behind by Yang Kai millennia ago. Mo Na Yi could not understand why Yang Kai had kept such a hidden hand until now instead of using it earlier. Regardless, the Black Ink clan had lost this battle. They thought that Yang Kai, who was trapped in the universe furnace, would no longer cause them any trouble, and that they could completely rid themselves of this heart demon. But who would have thought that they were still shrouded in his shadow? Mo Na Yi, before reaching the entrance to the passage, Xiao Xiao smiled coldly and said, "When I see you on the battlefield, I'll be sure to take your head." Standing beside her, Wu Qing gestured threateningly with a fierce look on his face. Then, the 2 turned around simultaneously and leapt towards the passage that was connected to wind mist territory, disappearing in an instant. Mo Na Yi simply watched without trying to stop them. In fact, he couldn't stop them. The 2 had already planned their escape. Even if Mo Na Yi had set up an ambush on the other side of the passage in advance, that might not be enough to contain them. In the previous situation, he believed that victory was already assured and thus there was no need to waste troops by setting up ambushes. But after Xiao Xiao summoned the world bead that sealed the giant spirit god, chaos ensued. Under the frenzied attack of the giant spirit god, he had no choice but to react in the moment. Now, pursuing the enemy was meaningless as they could potentially be ambushed by them. It was a complete and utter defeat, with heavy casualties. 7 pseudo-royal lords died while all the others were injured. Mo Na Yi didn't know how to explain this to Mo Yu when he returned. Throughout the years, Mo Yu had trusted him a lot, otherwise, he would not have granted him so much control. But looking back on the various plans he had presided over through the years, it seemed that none had progressed as he had envisioned. In a previous action against Yang Kai before the appearance of the universe furnace, many innate territory lords died. But, due to the sudden appearance of the universe furnace, Mo Na Yi had ultimately failed and allowed Yang Kai to escape. During the battle between the human race and Black Ink clan inside the universe furnace, the Black Ink clan suffered the loss of a new royal lord and several pseudo-royal lords. If Mo Na Yi hadn't quickly escaped in the end, he might have also been killed. Initially, he thought he had successfully prevented Xiong Shan from advancing to the Ninth Order, which was a small consolation, but in the end, Xiong Shan still succeeded. This time, the plan that was thought to be foolproof resulted in the loss of 7 pseudo-royal lords from the Black Ink clan and allowed the 2 strongest living Ninth Order masters to break free. Mo Na Yi felt discouraged all of a sudden. In the end, the human race is still favored by heaven. Who? Suddenly, a roar shook the void from deep within, and Mo Na Yi snapped back to attention. He turned his head in the direction of the commotion and saw a massive figure floating in the distance. He understood immediately that it was coming from the 2 giant spirit gods that had been entangled for many years. These 2 giant spirit gods had been locked in combat for almost a millennium, their limbs intertwined like children in a playground scuffle. 4 years, they remained stuck in this stalemate. Suddenly, there was a commotion, indicating that the fighting had drawn attention. Soon, clashes could be heard from the depths of the void. Mo Na Yi's expression changed as he quickly regained his composure and shouted, "Let's go." The barren territory was vast enough to accommodate 2 giant spirit gods as they wreaked havoc on the battlefield, but if all 4 were to start an all-out fight, there would be no safe place in this entire great territory left. A battle of this level was beyond the ability of mere pseudo-royal lords to interfere with. Even Mo Na Yi himself didn't want to get involved, therefore, as soon as he realized what was about to happen, he decisively led the pseudo-royal lords to retreat. Shortly after they returned to the no-return pass through the territory gate, 2 huge figures finally appeared in the void. They were entangled with each other as they approached that from the side and soon arrived near RDA's battlefield with his opponent. "Brother." RDA's eyes lit up when he saw RR's figure while engaged in a fierce battle with his opponent. The giant spirit gods, a unique race, had always been rare, and due to their innate behavior, they spend most of their time either traveling or hibernating, so they rarely cross paths. RDA had clearly not met his clansman in years, so seeing one now was quite exciting. Soon after though, he became enraged and shouted, "How dare you hit my brother? I'll kill you." With those words, he disregarded his own opponent and charged straight towards R. The black ink giant spirit god, who had been entangled with R, was slightly stunned, but quickly gave chase. Though their movements seemed clumsy, every strike shook the heavens and the earth. Meanwhile, R faced off against the opponent who had originally belonged to RDA. When RDA threw his opponent aside, the black ink giant spirit god naturally pursued and joined the chaotic fray. In an instant, the four giant spirit gods began wreaking havoc in the great territory, causing chaos and destruction. With each clash, the great territory was like a pond that had boulders tossed into it, sending ripples outwards in all directions. Wherever the ripples were, space became unstable and countless void cracks tore open. It was as if the entire barren territory was on the verge of collapsing. Several months later, a notice was sent from the Supreme Headquarters to the various frontline battlefields. Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing, who had both been stationed in Wind Mist territory for thousands of years, had returned. The humans gained 2 more Ninth Order Masters, with Xiao Xiao assuming command of the Soaring Cloud Army, while Wu Qing led the Purple Feather Army. Furthermore, the humans had an additional giant spirit god as an ally, which restrained the black ink giant spirit god that was trapped for many years. The news spread and the morale of the humans soared. The boost in momentum allowed them to easily seize several great territories on various fronts. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 5822, Old Tree Blooms, Marshall Peak 500 years. It has already been 500 years. Do you know how I managed to make it through these 500 years? The low voice was full of repression, helplessness, and a hint of anger, revealing the speaker's inner unrest. But there was no response. On the soul-warming lotus, Fang Tian Ci looked at Thunder Shadow as if he was an idiot. Thunder Shadow immediately lost his composure and complained, "You should have replied by asking me how. If you don't ask, how am I supposed to continue?" Childish. Fang Tian Ci threw out a comment casually. Upon hearing that, Thunder Shadow became deeply hurt and looked helpless. "It's so boring to be with someone like you. Surely no woman has ever liked you." Fang Tian Ci chuckled, "I have many descendant. Big brother, how's this universe world?" Ignoring him, Thunder Shadow turned his head and asked Yang Kai. Soon, Yang Kai's response came, "The world principles here are close to perfection, and there are signs of simple life. This can be considered a newly born universe world. Perhaps in a few years, real living creatures will appear." Thunder Shadow immediately became excited. "Doesn't that mean we are getting closer to the 3,000 worlds?" According to Yang Kai's previous speculation, by exploring the universe worlds along the way and observing the completeness of their world principles, one could determine whether the direction of travel was correct. The closer they got to the 3,000 worlds, the more complete the world principles in the universe worlds would be. Yang Kai had been constantly correcting their direction and rushing forward during these last 500 years. The universe worlds they encountered along the way indeed had more complete world principles as predicted. This universe world had its world principles fully taken shape, and there were now some of the simplest forms of life emerging. If there was life, it meant that this universe world had the conditions for life to exist. Perhaps after another million years of evolution, some unique creatures specific to this universe world would emerge. They were heading in the right direction, so all that was left was time. Yang Kai had been returning from the edge of the universe, and it did indeed take a lot of time. It had been 500 years, yet he still couldn't find his way back. 500 years had passed since the universe furnace closed. Since Yang Kai was unsure of the state of the war between the human race and the Black Ink clan, he had to hurry back. Without staying much longer in this universe world, he continued on his journey. 100 years later, when Yang Kai descended to another universe world to investigate the situation, he discovered that there were indeed living creatures in it. Most of the living creatures lived in the vast seas, with few living on land. The entire universe world was covered with green vegetation, giving it a lush appearance. With the emergence of living creatures, It meant that the universe world was now fully alive and had the potential to give rise to sentient creatures like humans in the star boundary. Yang Kai once again attempted to connect with the world tree but to no avail. The various universe worlds in the 3000 worlds were interdependent with the world tree, with each world fruit on the world tree reflecting the state of each universe world. If one died, its corresponding world fruit would wither away as well. This universe world was vibrant with vitality, but it had no connection to the world tree at all. Ultimately, it was because the power of the world tree had not yet reached this place. After all, this place was just too far away from the 3000 worlds. Yang Kai couldn't help but recall his previous speculations after hearing Thunder Shadow's casual remark that left him with much to ponder. Was the universe furnace the thing that created the 3000 worlds and the black ink battlefield? What about beyond? Is there truly only one universe? Are there more unknown universes beyond this one? Perhaps the 3000 worlds is one universe, and the black ink battlefield is another. At his current location, Yang Kai believed he was in a much deeper part of the black ink battlefield, a place that neither the humans nor Black Ink clan had ever set foot in. If it were truly the same universe though, why couldn't the power of the world tree reach this place, where the world principles were already fully established, and living beings had even emerged? Yang Kai found himself deep in thought. Perhaps I can find a way to connect this universe world to the world tree. If I succeed, I could use the old tree's power to return to Grand Ancient Ruins boundary without wasting any more time and energy on the journey. The road ahead was clearly still quite long, and though Yang Kai used space secret techniques to speed up his travel, it still took him 600 years with no sign of the end. At this point, he was uncertain when he would finally see the familiar landscape again. Then, Yang Kai had an idea. He had an item that he could use to test his theory. Without hesitation, he soared into the air and found a mountain valley filled with the fragrance of flowers. Then, he opened the portal to his small universe and moved a towering tree out of it. It was a world tree clone. This was not the one that belonged to him, but to Fang Tian-Ci. During the union of the three selves, Fang Tian-Ci's small universe merged completely with Yang Kai's, strengthening the size of his small universe and adding to his heritage. Naturally, the world tree clone was brought into Yang Kai's small universe as well. Yang Kai already had one, so a second one was redundant. He had intended to find a suitable person to give it to and help them grow quickly, but he had never expected to be needing to use it in the current situation. Surging his world force, Yang Kai dug a large pit in the mountain valley and planted the world tree clone in it. He wasn't worried about it not surviving as the world tree was a mystical and unparalleled entity. The simple root planted in the star boundary by Yang Kai previously had grown into a towering tree, so a complete tree would naturally thrive. After completing this, Yang Kai did not continue on his journey but instead sat down under the tree and waited quietly. He didn't know if his plan would work, and even if it did, he didn't know how many years it would take. Quietly resigning himself to the possibility of wasting another 100 years, Yang Kai hoped that his plan would bear fruit within that time frame. If it didn't, he would dig up the world tree clone and continue his journey. It would only be 100 years, so it wasn't too bad. Moreover, he wasn't planning to just sit and wait. Although he had advanced to the Ninth Order Open Heaven realm and had even taken a big step forward in his cultivation by merging Fang Tian-Ci's small universe with his, it did not mean he would be satisfied with that. He still had room for improvement. His future enemies would no longer be limited to the territory lords and royal lords of the Black Ink clan. He might even have to face Mo, who was in the creation realm, so he needed to be stronger. The martial Dao was a long journey of exploration, accumulating strength and experience bit by bit. He had a lot of cultivation materials on hand and could refine them to continuously strengthen his own heritage. As time passed, sets of material turned into dust in Yang Kai's hands. In the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, the world tree stood majestic and grand as a precious treasure born along with heavens and earth. When the heavens and earth split, it had already come into existence at almost the same time as the first primordial light. Its birth was rooted in the numerous universe worlds of the 3000 worlds, and its existence was intimately linked with the life or death of those universe worlds. The peak world tree was covered in world fruits, and every branch was bent under the weight of the fruits. But, as the Black Ink clan invaded the 3,000 worlds, one by one the universe worlds were corrupted by the Black Ink strength, causing them to die, which resulted in the withering of world fruits in droves. Until today, there were only slightly over 2,000 fruits left on its branches. Thankfully, Yang Kai was able to save a large number of universe worlds by refining them in the past. Otherwise, the world tree would have already withered away completely. Despite this, the world tree still appeared old and feeble. The loss of so many universe worlds in the 3,000 worlds had drained the world tree of its vitality, so it spent most of its time standing in silence apart from when Yang Kai visited it. It could do nothing to stop the calamity befalling the 3,000 worlds, and if the human race were to lose, the world tree would perish with them. Suddenly, an old face appeared on the thick trunk with a look of surprise and doubt showing on its brow. It vaguely felt that something in a very distant place seemed to have a faint resonance with itself, but this feeling flashed by, making it difficult to determine its authenticity. After a brief moment of hesitation, the old face on the trunk gradually disappeared. The withering and falling of world fruits caused its vitality to plummet, leaving it with little energy to think about minor issues. Most of the time over the years, it had been asleep, only waking when Yang Kai contacted it. In the distant void, Yang Kai sat cross-legged under the tree in that universe world, constantly refining various materials to enhance his strength. The towering tree behind him danced in the wind, while the massive roots began to intertwine deep in the earth in a place invisible to the naked eye, madly devouring the power of this universe world and merging with it. Years later, in the grand ancient ruins boundary, the old tree suddenly woke up from its slumber and the old face appeared once again on its thick trunk. It clearly carried a puzzled look this time, as it felt that something strange had happened to itself, but because it had just awakened, it was difficult to determine what this change was. Only after carefully examining itself did the old tree suddenly realize. A branch trembled and drooped down, and on the trunk, the old face of the old tree showed a look of pleasant surprise and doubt, changing alternatively. This was all because, on that branch, a little flower bud had sprouted. The old tree was shocked. It actually bloomed. This had never happened before. It was born with heaven and earth and had hung with world fruits since its birth, with each world fruit corresponding to a universe world in the 3,000 worlds. But it had never experienced something like blooming, and for a moment, the old tree was a bit confused. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 58-23, finally back. Marshall Peak, the blooming of the old tree was an unprecedented event that had never happened before. It wanted to understand what had happened to itself, so after careful examination, it sensed a very distant location through the flower bud. Suddenly, it understood that the sensation that had arisen several years ago was not just a figment of its imagination. Although the sensation was still vague and intermittent, it did actually exist. Why do I have this strange connection with a place so far away? Old Tree was completely baffled. Because of the unusual occurrence, Old Tree remained vigilant and did not fall into a deep sleep in the following years, occasionally investigating the situation of the flower bud. As time passed, the little flower bud gradually bloomed, and with the falling of the petals, a tiny world fruit appeared. Old Tree was completely shocked. For countless years, it had only experienced the withering and falling of its world fruits, and it had never given birth to a new one. Furthermore, it did not understand what caused this sudden change. The only thing it knew was that the birth of this world fruit was not harmful to itself, because, with the birth of this new fruit, a weak vitality was injected into its old body. Several dozen years later, when the world fruit grew to the size of a fist and became completely solidified, it suddenly felt a faint call from it. It had experienced this many times before. It was like when Yang Kai needed to borrow its strength to arrive before it. Under the world tree clone in this universe world, Yang Kai was overjoyed. He had finally made contact with the old tree, and although it seemed a bit unstable, the current result confirmed his previous speculation. Over the past several dozen years, the world tree clone had undoubtedly grown significantly and had already completely merged with this universe world. After devouring a large amount of world force in this place, the world tree clone began to nourish this land too. Over the years, Yang Kai tried connecting with the world tree every once in a while but made no progress. That made him think that his previous idea was wrong. It wasn't until this moment that he finally made contact with the world tree in the faraway Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. This made him feel delighted. In the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, the old tree understood roughly what was happening. The world tree clone planted was technically also its sole clone. It was not aware of the situation before because the world tree clone had not fully merged with the universe world it was planted on, but now that it had, despite being separated by the endless void, the old tree could vaguely sense the situation through the world tree clone now. It couldn't help but marvel at what was happening as it had never experienced anything like it before. Although their connection was not very clear, Yang Kai's intentions were crystal clear to old tree. Over the years, every time Yang Kai connected to it, it meant that he needed to enter the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. So, old tree immediately exerted its power, causing its massive body to start shaking. In the next moment, old tree's aged face suddenly changed. Under the world tree clone in that universe world, Yang Kai's figure abruptly disappeared as soon as the old tree began to act. It was as if Yang Kai had entered an unpredictable and indescribable space in an instant. He had experienced this many times before, so he was already used to it. However, Yang Kai quickly realized that something was wrong. Every time he used the power of the world tree to enter the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, it was basically an instantaneous thing, but this time, it seemed to be taking a long time. After traveling for a long time in that strange space, Yang Kai still hadn't emerged, not to mention, the connection between him and the world tree became very vague, almost to the point of being non-existent. Yang Kai was shocked. He was only able to enter the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary by borrowing the power of the world tree because he had saved and refined more than 2,000 universe worlds in the past. Later, he placed these universe worlds on the corresponding world fruits on the old tree. It could be said that these universe worlds and their corresponding world fruits all had his imprint on them. It was precisely because of these marks that he had an unbreakable connection with old tree, which allowed him to use the latter's power to enter the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. Having a connection was the reason why they could sense each other. Now that their connection was almost about to be cut off, it became a nightmare for Yang Kai. If the connection was truly cut off, he didn't know what he would encounter. It was highly likely that he would be trapped on the way of trying to enter the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, and it would be difficult for him to find his way out. Thankfully, the blurry connection was re-established again when it was on the verge of cutting off, clearly because old tree had also sensed it and was exerting all its efforts. Without daring to delay, Yang Kai immediately used his space secret technique to move forward quickly. However, it was in vain. The road ahead was long and the end was nowhere in sight. Despite old tree's best efforts, their connection was rapidly weakening again. It made Yang Kai frantic, realizing that he was still too far away from the old tree to be easily guided into the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, even with the old tree's power. If their connection was completely lost, he might never find his way back. At this critical moment, Yang Kai quickly immersed himself in thought to figure out a plan while rushing forward. He had weathered many storms over the years, so he developed a calm demeanor in the face of crises. Suddenly, Yang Kai lit up as he thought of a solution. He quickly opened a portal to his small universe and a towering tree appeared in it. It was his own world tree clone. By planting a world tree clone in a newborn universe world, he was able to establish a connection with the old tree. If a planted world tree clone had such an effect, then his own world tree clone must also have it. Sure enough, when Yang Kai did this, the blurry connection between him and the old tree instantly became strong. At the next moment, Yang Kai felt the power of his small universe uncontrollably flowing out like a dam breaking, gushing like a raging river. In the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, the old tree's old face was full of hardship, obviously nearing its limit. The giant world tree was also shaking constantly until at a certain moment, ripples appeared on the newly formed world fruit, followed by a figure breaking out of it and falling in front of the old tree. Subsequently, the shaking trunk gradually calmed down, and on the tree's surface, the old tree's aged face looked even more withered and old. Looking at the familiar figure that suddenly appeared, it couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. I've really overexerted myself. Yang Kai was also gasping for breath, half kneeling on the ground, his face slightly pale. He had just gone through a very dangerous journey. If he hadn't thought of using his own world tree clone at the last moment, he would have had no way to return to the grand ancient ruins boundary. Though he managed to return, the world force in his small universe had been greatly depleted. He was currently at the Ninth Order Open Heaven realm, and the heritage of his small universe was extremely rich. However, this one action had consumed nearly half of his strength. If it weren't for his world tree clone isolating and protecting his small universe, Void World would have been in turmoil. After calming down a bit, Yang Kai stood up and looked up at the familiar world tree, feeling joy in his heart. He had finally returned. "Where did you go?" Old Tree suddenly spoke up. He had guided Yang Kai here many times before, and although it did take a toll on it, it was still within an acceptable range. But this time, the guidance had severely damaged its foundation, and almost failed. Old Tree was very curious about where Yang Kai went, as in its perception, its clone had been left in a very, very distant place. Yang Kai sat in front of the old tree and sighed. "It's a long story." He recounted his experiences simply, and upon hearing how the universe furnace created the universe worlds from chaos and how Yang Kai returned from the edge of the universe, even Old Tree, who had existed since ancient times, was flabbergasted. It knew about the universe furnace, but had no idea that universe worlds were created from the sea of chaos beyond the universe. If that were true, then its own birth could also be said to have originated from the universe furnace, as it was the universe furnace that gave birth to the universe worlds, which were symbiotic with the world tree. After telling his story, Yang Kai couldn't help but complain, "Old Tree, why didn't you tell me earlier about the wonders of your clones?" If he had known, he might have been able to return even sooner. But on second thought, even if he did know about it, it would probably be useless. His return this time was already the extreme limit. Even if Yang Kai planted the clone at the furthest reaches of the universe and someone made a connection with the old tree, he might not have been able to use its power to return to the grand ancient ruins boundary. Old Tree fell silent for a moment before saying, "I too had no idea until now." Upon hearing that, Yang Kai was speechless. It made sense though, given the countless ages that passed. Perhaps Old Tree had given away some of its clones before, but all of them had undoubtedly been refined by those masters. No master before Yang Kai was willing to plant the clone in a universe world, as they had all used them for their own purposes. Although Yang Kai had planted world tree clones in both the Star Boundary and the Myriad Monsters world previously, those two universes' world already had world fruits corresponding to the world tree. Thus, the true use of the clones could not be fully realized. This time, Yang Kai had a sudden inspiration and planted a world tree clone in a very remote location, which created an inseparable connection between that universe world and the world tree. It could be said that from ancient times to the present, no one had ever done what Yang Kai did, so of course, Old Tree did not know about it, becoming surprised when a branch suddenly bloomed and bore fruit. Though the world tree existed for a long time and saw and experienced many things, it didn't mean it was all-knowing and all-powerful. At the very least, it was not aware of the creation of the universe worlds by the universe furnace from chaos. Common people, and even Old Tree, only thought of the universe furnace as an opportunity, but the true mystery of the universe furnace was only known to Yang Kai. "Old Tree, I have your clone in my small universe too. Doesn't that mean that in the future, no matter where I am, you can guide me here?" Yang Kai asked, only realizing this after experiencing today's events. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 58-24, Source, Marshall Peak. If that were the case, then his actions would be much easier in the future. Even if he encountered the same situation as before, he wouldn't have to spend too much time rushing around, since he could simply open up his small universe, borrow the connection between his world tree clone and the world tree, and return at will when needed. That was what he thought, but Yang Kai couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The situation seemed more complicated than he had imagined. Old Tree didn't directly answer the question, but instead said, "Think about it. What is the source that helps me to guide you to the grand ancient ruins boundary and the many universe worlds from here?" Source. Yang Kai mused. Upon closer inspection, he realized that he was able to enter the grand ancient ruins boundary through the power of the world tree because he had refined over 2,000 universe worlds in the past. Each of those universe worlds reflected the world fruits on Old Tree's body, creating an inseparable connection between them. Therefore, regardless of where young Kai was, he only needed a living universe world as a medium in order to use the power of the old tree to enter the grand ancient ruins boundary. It was also for this reason that he specially refined a universe world from the 3,000 worlds and brought it to the primordial heaven's source grand restriction so that he could easily investigate the situation there at any time. And every time he left the grand ancient ruins boundary, he needed a world fruit as a medium. For example, if he wanted to go to the star boundary, he needed to find the corresponding world fruit. If he wanted to go to the primordial heaven's source grand restriction, he just had to find the world fruit that corresponded to the universe world he had left behind previously. Yang Kai suddenly realized, the source is the world fruit. The face on the trunk of the tree nodded. You can also say it's the still living universe worlds. So, my plan won't work. His small universe didn't have a corresponding world fruit. When he returned just now, he only strengthened the connection between himself and the old tree using his world tree clone. After all, each clone was a part of the old tree, and there was an inseparable connection between each clone and the old tree. Realizing this, Yang Kai became slightly disappointed. Then, Old Tree suddenly said, I may not be able to guide you to the grand ancient ruins boundary in the future at all. Yang Kai was taken aback as he realized the problem. Was the consumption too great this time? He had just noticed that Old Tree's condition was worse than the last time he saw it. The leaves on the huge tree crown were slightly yellowed and showed signs of withering. Old Tree responded with a grunt, the distance was too great. Although my clone did establish a connection, my power has not completely radiated to that range. I'm afraid I will fall into a deep sleep soon. What can I do to help? Yang Kai asked. With Old Tree sleeping, he would definitely lose a means of quick travel. At the very least, he would not be able to go to the primordial heaven's source grand restriction whenever he wanted. Old Tree pondered for a moment and then shook its trunk. You probably can't help much unless there are more universe worlds that can establish a connection with me like this time. However, that was unrealistic. All the remaining universe worlds in the 3,000 worlds had already been corrupted by black ink strength and had died. Where could there be more universe worlds? On Yang Kai's return journey, he did see many newly born universe worlds, but Old Tree's power could not cover such a far distance. Though he could use the World Tree clones, Old Tree could not give him any more of those either. The 3 World Tree clones back then were already Old Tree's limit. It could be said that it might never wake up after this deep sleep. Only when the human race completely defeated the Black Ink clan and after the 3,000 worlds went through generations of recuperation might there be a chance for it to restore its vitality. Yang Kai fell silent. Since he had established a connection with Old Tree years ago and received Old Tree's assistance, he felt quite helpless not being able to provide it with any help this time. Where do you want to go now? Old Tree asked. Before I fall asleep, I can still send you there for the last time. The star boundary. Yang Kai slowly stood up, cupped his fist, and looked at Old Tree's aged face on the trunk. Please rest assured and recuperate. I will take care of the matter with the Black Ink clan. When you wake up, it will be after the disaster has passed. Old Tree chuckled. I'll be waiting for that day. Hopefully, that day would come soon. Yang Kai nodded, then quickly headed towards the world fruit corresponding to the star boundary. At the same time, Old Tree exerted its last bit of strength. In an instant, the world turned upside down and it rapidly enlarged in Yang Kai's vision. In the grand ancient ruins boundary, Old Tree used its last bit of power, and its face slowly dissipated. In the moment of its consciousness falling asleep, it suddenly realized something. This time, Yang Kai seemed to have already reached the 9th order open heaven realm. It was so weak before that it had not noticed it. Somewhere close to the star boundary, Yang Kai broke through space and appeared. As always, the moment he showed up, a powerful divine sense probed from somewhere in the star boundary to investigate the situation. This was the master who was in charge of the star boundary, using his divine sense to check the situation. Open heaven realm masters in general were not so sensitive. Even those who reached the 8th order would not have sensed Yang Kai while he was concealing himself. However, the great emperors of the star boundary were capable of such feats. As great emperors, they were intimately tied to the star boundary and recognized by its will. With their hearts set on it, They could not miss any suspicious situations with their divine sense in the range of the star boundary. With a touch of his divine sense, the other party clearly perceived Yang Kai's identity and quickly withdrew it. The next moment, a figure soared into the sky from somewhere in the star boundary, appearing soundlessly and swiftly before Yang Kai. Looking at the visitor, Yang Kai smiled slightly. "Senior Iron Blood, it's been a while." The visitor was none other than Iron Blood Great Emperor, Zhon Wu Hen. He looked at Yang Kai with suspicion before nodding. "You're back?" When the universe furnace closed and Yang Kai disappeared without a trace, not only did the Black Ink clan speculate that he was trapped inside, but some of the high-ranking authority figures of the human race did too. Although they didn't know why Yang Kai would be trapped inside, they had no way to rescue him, so they could only let it be. However, a small number of people still firmly believed that even if Yang Kai was trapped in the universe furnace, he wouldn't be stuck for too long. They believed that he would break free and return eventually without needing to wait until the next opening of the universe furnace. Therefore, when Zhon Wu Hen saw Yang Kai, he wasn't too surprised since he had watched Yang Kai grow up from when he was still a young man. Yang Kai could do what ordinary people couldn't, so escaping from the universe furnace shouldn't be anything to him. "Are you injured?" Yang Kai frowned. Zhon Wu Hen clearly had quite severe injuries on his body. At this moment, his face was pale and his aura was unstable. With his cultivation at the 8th Order Open Heaven realm, it was evident how intense his war had become. Yang Kai, on the other hand, was not surprised that Zhon Wu Hen had ascended to the 8th Order, given that the great emperors of the star boundary had all directly broken through to the 6th Order realm. Additionally, with their unique advantages when cultivating in the star boundary, they had all already advanced to the 8th Order many years ago. At this moment, Zhon Wu Hen was already at the peak of the 8th Order Open Heaven realm, but because of the innate limitations of the Open Heaven realm method, he couldn't make another breakthrough. He did not enter when the universe furnace opened. In fact, Yang Kai did not see any masters from the star boundary inside. Zhon Wu Hen said lightly, "I was injured while fighting outside. It's nothing special." If it weren't for his serious injuries, he wouldn't have come back to the star boundary to recuperate. To him, battles were the essence of life. After a moment of silence, Zhon Wu Hen continued, "Ice Feather and Heaven's Revelations died." Upon receiving the news, Yang Kai's expression trembled as he closed his eyes and sighed. There was never a war with no casualties. In the countless years of battle against the Black Ink clan, there were naturally countless deaths. Whether it was on the Black Ink battlefield or later on the Great Territory battlefields, the reaping of life had become a norm of war. Even Yang Kai's own Dawn Squad, which he had led back then, had lost several members under his watch. Ice Feather and Heaven's Revelations were great emperors of the star boundary, who already ascended to the 8th Order Open Heaven realm for a long time, but in this catastrophic war that swept across the universe, what use was it being in the 8th Order? Many times, it was difficult to even protect oneself from the Black Ink clan with such a cultivation. Frankly speaking, Yang Kai was not that familiar with these two great emperors. It was only because they were fellow people from the star boundary, which gave him a sense of kinship compared to those masters from the cave heavens and paradises. Even so, when he heard the news of their deaths, his heart sank. "Is the war that intense?" Yang Kai furrowed his brows and asked. Zhon Wu Hen nodded. "You'll have to ask the Supreme Headquarters for the specifics. They have a better grasp of the situation." He paused then continued, "Their sacrifice was not in vain. The star boundary's reputation was not tarnished, and their deaths also made room for successors. There are a few new great emperors who have emerged, all who directly ascended to the 7th Order, with the potential to reach the 9th Order in the future. Every universe world had a limit to the number of great emperors it could sustain. The star boundary's limit was 10 many years ago, but with the continuous nourishment of the World Tree clone, its capacity had increased, and now it can support 12 great emperors. However, as long as the older generation great emperors remained, it was difficult for newcomers to rise to power. With the fall of Ice Feather and Heaven's Revelations, 2 great emperor positions were vacated in the star boundary. Currently, there were many talents in the star boundary who had already directly ascended to the 7th Order, so they should be able to gain recognition from the star boundary's will and become great emperors in the future, achieving twice the result with half the effort when they cultivate in the star boundary. But, Yang Kai shook his head, there isn't much time left for them to grow. The time it took to advance from 7th order to 9th order was incredibly long. Even if they became great emperors of the star boundary, it would take thousands of years for them to fully mature. It was better to rely on the many 8th order masters than them at present. The good seedlings who directly advanced to 7th order in the first generation were now all 8th order open heaven realm masters. Perhaps in a short time, they could advance to the 9th order. As for the human race, as long as the first new generation of 9th order open heaven realm masters finally arrived, there would be an endless stream of 9th order masters emerging. Over the past thousands of years, the accumulation of the human race's power had already reached a point where they were ready to soar. Once a certain critical point was reached, the human race would inevitably produce countless elites. This was the power that the human race could rely on in the future, and it was also due to the open heaven realm cradle, the star boundary. As Yang Kai spoke, he connected his mind with Void World and projected it into the Void Dao Temple. Soon, the portal to his small universe opened, and figures poured out of it one after another. Over the years, Void Dao Temple had accumulated a large number of good seedlings who could ascend to the open heaven realm. Martial Peak. Martial Peak, Chapter 5825, Return, Martial Peak. In Yang Kai's small universe, time flowed at a different pace from the outside world, and this flow rate only increased as his mastery over the Tao of time and his strength grew. At present, with his cultivation at the 9th order open heaven realm and his mastery of the Tao of time at the 8th level, the flow rate in his small universe had reached a 10-to-1 ratio compared to the outside world. In other words, while one day passed outside, 10 days had already elapsed in his small universe. It had been many years since Yang Kai last brought out talents from the Void Dao Temple. In terms of the passing of time in his small universe, it had been over 10,000 years. Over such a long time, a considerable number of outstanding talents had naturally accumulated in the Void Dao Temple. These people had already reached their limits within the Void Dao Temple and would generally ascend to the open heaven realm shortly after leaving Void World, requiring a master to guide and protect them. However, Yang Kai always left this matter to his head manager to handle, and since Hua Qing-sai was not present today, he handed the task to Zhon Wu-hen. When all the Emperor Realm Masters gathered, Yang Kai said, "I'm entrusting these people to you. Manager Hua knows how to handle them." Zhon Wu-hen nodded and asked, "Are you not going back?" Yang Kai looked towards the star boundary and shook his head, "No need." He had just returned, and knowing how intense the war had become, he needed to head to the Supreme Headquarters right away. Saying so, he waved his hand and took a step forward, immediately disappearing. The group of disciples who just left the Void Dao Temple didn't understand what was going on and simply watched the Dao Lord disappear far off into the distance. They could only bow and send him off. Meanwhile, in High Heaven Palace's pill room, in front of a huge alchemy furnace, Xia Ningchang, who had her face veiled, was using different techniques to control the furnace's fire and refine spirit pills. The process of refining these spirit pills was not difficult as it was a standard kind of healing pill that was in high demand on the battlefield. With her being an alchemy great grandmaster, she naturally had no difficulty in refining them. Suddenly, Xia Ningchang paused for a moment and looked up at the sky outside. Although thick walls and heavy barriers were blocking her view, her clear eyes seemed to ignore all obstructions and she caught a glimpse of a familiar figure that was already far away. The flames in the furnace of the alchemy furnace flickered slightly. Then, Xia Ningchang quickly focused her mind and controlled the heat, continuing to refine the spirit pills. Her eyes instantly became crescent-shaped as she became extremely happy and joyful upon seeing that figure. Her techniques changed constantly, and the alchemy furnace echoed with the sound of the spirit pills forming, a clear and pleasant sound. Previously when Mi Jinglun came to the High Heaven Palace to talk to her about Yang Kai's disappearance, Xia Ningchang had acted calm and not worried about Yang Kai's safety, but in reality, how could she not be concerned at all? She simply had enough confidence in her husband to one day return. She believed that no matter what difficulties and dangers he faced, no matter where he was, he would definitely come back because this was his home, and there were still people waiting for him there. Now that he had finally returned, Xia Ningqiang could finally put down the worry that had been weighing on her heart. Outside of the star boundary, Hua Qingcai urgently led a group of Open Heaven Realm Masters over after receiving Zhong Wuhen's message. When she saw the many Emperor Realm Masters gathered around, she was slightly startled, but quickly realized what was happening and exclaimed in delight, "Palace Master has returned." This was not the first time she had seen such a scene of many emperors who were about to ascend to the Open Heaven Realm gathered together, and she knew exactly where these Emperor Realm Masters came from. Zhong Wuhen nodded and pointed to those Emperor Realm Masters, saying, "I'll leave this to you." After speaking, he flashed back to the star boundary. He was seriously injured and needed to continue healing. If he had not sensed Yang Kai's aura, he would not have ventured out of seclusion so rashly. Originally, Hua Qingcai wanted to ask more about Yang Kai's condition, but Zhong Wuhen left too quickly, giving her no chance to speak. She was annoyed, but the Palace Master's return was good news. For years, there had been rumors that their Palace Master was trapped in the universe furnace, and many people were worried about him. Now that the Palace Master had returned though, those people should be able to rest assured. Senior. I can't hold on much longer, a weak voice suddenly came from the side. Hua Qingcai turned her head and saw a Dao Temple disciple with a strained expression, his aura fluctuating violently, clearly on the verge of a breakthrough. They had been cultivating in Void Dao Temple for many years and had already reached the limit of their cultivation with their condensed Dao seal and refined element powers, but because of the suppression of Yang Kai's small universe, they were unable to break through. Now that they had left his small universe and the suppression was gone, they were basically ready to burst forth. Not only the speaker, but many others showed signs of imminent breakthrough. Hua Qingcai was used to this kind of situation already and immediately ordered these disciples to spread out and find suitable positions. Afterwards, she had the Open Heaven Realm Masters she brought to stand guard for the disciples. She personally distributed Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pills to the Dao Temple disciples, which drastically increased the success rate of their breakthrough. It should be noted that those selected from Void Dao Temple were all talented individuals. At the very least, they could directly ascend to the 5th Order Open Heaven Realm, and many among them could directly ascend to the 6th Order. Every now and then, there were even a few who directly ascended to the 7th Order. Without the Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill, it was likely that some would fail in their breakthrough. However, over the years, there had not been a single disciple from Void Dao Temple who suffered such a fate. This was largely thanks to the efficacy of the Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pills. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner. On the other hand, Yang Kai had arrived at the territory gate of High Heaven Territory. Security was extremely tight here, with several 8th Order Masters personally guarding the portal with a purifying black ink battleship sealed with a large amount of purifying light on standby. High Heaven Territory and the New Great Territory were now the most important rear bases for the human race and the foundation of their existence. Their importance was equivalent to the control of the No-Return Pass by the Black Ink clan. As the only gateway in and out of these territories, this territory gate naturally received the highest level of attention and was highly guarded. The purifying Black Ink battleship stationed there could prevent any Black Ink disciples from infiltrating, and all soldiers returning from the front lines, regardless of their cultivation, had to pass through it. Yang Kai walked over without hiding his tracks. The 8th Order Masters guarding the area naturally noticed his aura, and each of them became suspicious and uncertain. There were only a few 9th Order Masters among the human race, and all of them were well known and usually leading an army to fight the Black Ink clan. Therefore, it was natural for them to be puzzled by the sudden appearance of another 9th Order Master in the rear area. The group of 8th Order Masters quickly gathered together and waited attentively. It wasn't until Yang Kai's figure appeared in their sight that one of the 8th Order Masters suddenly realized, "It's him." Saying so, he showed a happy expression and took the initiative to welcome Yang Kai. As he approached, he cupped his fist and said, "Yang, I suddenly don't know how to address you." He was much older than Yang Kai in terms of age and was also a seasoned veteran 8th Order Master. They had met each other a few times before, and he had always addressed Yang Kai as junior brother. But now that Yang Kai had advanced to the 9th Order, calling him junior brother seemed inappropriate. Besides, his seniority was much higher than Yang Kai's, so calling him sir was also quite inappropriate. After a moment of consideration, this Eighth Order Master called out, Army Commander Yang. In terms of titles, Yang Kai was still Army Commander of the Profound Nether Army, though currently, Oyu Yang Lai was taking charge of it. However, as long as the Supreme Headquarters didn't issue a clear transfer order, Yang Kai would always be the Army Commander of Profound Nether Army. Yang Kai recognized the person and greeted him, Senior Brother Hai. After all, they did meet each other a few times, so Yang Kai had some impression of this veteran Eighth Order Master before him. Chi Hai's heart warmed as Yang Kai addressed him as Senior Brother, obviously trying to avoid the awkwardness of addressing him according to their cultivations. In the past, there was no need for such a thing as all Ninth Order Masters had lived for countless years, with intimidating seniority and status, so the title of Old Ancestor was appropriate. But now, the situation was different. Yang Kai had just ascended to the Ninth Order realm, and in the future, there would be more rising stars reaching that height as well. The title of Old Ancestor would no longer be suitable for the new generations. At this moment, many Eighth Order Masters had gathered around. Whether they knew Yang Kai or not, they had already guessed his identity and bowed respectfully. The eyes of the younger generation Eighth Order Masters were full of admiration and awe when they looked at Yang Kai. Even as they took their first steps on their martial Tao, Yang Kai's name had been famous, and many aspired to become like him. Now, he stood before them as a Ninth Order Open Heaven Realm Master, causing them all to secretly marvel that legends were indeed legends. Yang Kai was just passing through, and he wasn't familiar with the many Eighth Order Masters here, so there wasn't much to talk about. After being routinely questioned by Chi Hai, he quickly departed. Passing through the territory gate, he arrived at the nearby Great Territory and headed straight for the universe fragment where the Supreme Headquarters was located. Soon, the universe fragment was in sight. At a glance, there were figures on it, and many masters gathered around, busy doing who knew what. In the main conference hall, Mi Jing Lun was studying the situation of the various battlefields and discussing corresponding plans with many staff members. The staff members had different thoughts and often argued over some details, but ultimately, Mi Jing Lun was the one to make the final decision. The entire hall was bustling like a crowded marketplace. Suddenly, Mi Jing Lun turned and looked outside. The staff members who were arguing were immediately silenced, looking at him with surprise and suspicion. This is, Mi Jing Lun frowned and took a few steps forward, coming outside the main hall. As he looked up, he saw a stream of light swiftly approaching from the void, appearing before him in the blink of an eye. Then, the stream of light dispersed, revealing a familiar figure. Looking at the person who had suddenly appeared before him, Mi Jing Lun couldn't help but blink his eyes, thinking he was imagining things. Yang Kai smiled and cupped his fist, Senior Brother Mi. Following Mi Jing Lun, the other staff members became slightly shocked as well and then began to stir, with low cries ringing out. It's Yang Kai. Senior Yang has returned. Marshall Peak. Marshall Peak, Chapter 5826, The Situation, Marshall Peak. Yang Kai was thought to be trapped in the universe furnace and there had been no contact from him for over 600 years, so whether he was alive or dead was unknown. This was undoubtedly a blow to the human race, especially with the ongoing war between them and the Black Ink clan. While there were a few Ninth Order Masters among the human race now, none of them had the total suppressive advantages over the pseudo-royal lords in battles, not even the veterans like Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing. In Mi Jing Lun's understanding, the only one who could possibly achieve this was Yang Kai. Back when the Black Ink clan was holding their ground in the Great Territory battlefields, the war would not have been this difficult if Yang Kai was around. Mi Jing Lun originally thought that he might have to wait until the next opening of the universe furnace for Yang Kai to have a chance to escape, but unexpectedly, he appeared before him right at this moment. Mi Jing Lun was extremely surprised and couldn't help but ask, "How did you escape from the universe furnace?" Universe furnace? Yang Kai was taken aback at first but quickly realized that Mi Jing Lun must have misunderstood something. It was understandable since he had been out of contact for so many years, so the logical assumption was that he was trapped in the universe furnace. He couldn't hold back his laughter as he explained, "I wasn't trapped in the universe furnace. Rather, It took me to the edge of the universe, and I had to spend quite some time returning. The edge of the universe? Jing Lun looked puzzled. It's a long story. Yang Kai waved his hand, not wanting to talk about it as the war between the two races was the more crucial issue now. Even if others knew the universe furnace created all universe worlds from chaos, it was of no use to them. It could at most broaden their horizons, but hearing about it secondhand was not nearly as shocking as witnessing it personally. Though Jing Lun didn't ask any further, he had doubts in his mind. Where exactly was the edge of the universe, and how far away must it have been for Yang Kai to take hundreds of years to return even with his abilities? After composing himself, Jing Lun said, "You're back just in time. There are some things that I need you to do." He and many of his staff members were discussing a battle in a certain great territory that was in a worrying state as they didn't have enough manpower to mobilize to support it. As such, Yang Kai's return was quite timely. Yang Kai nodded and said, "Just give me the order, senior brother. Come inside and we'll talk." Jing Lun held Yang Kai's arm and led him into the main hall. After a while, everyone took their seats. "Let me tell you about the current war situation," Ling Jun spoke. Yang Kai nodded, as he urgently needed to understand what was going on right now. The two sides had been at war since the universe furnace appeared, and it had been over 600 years since its closure. Yang Kai had no idea how the war had progressed during this time, or what the situation was like currently. He did ask Zhon Wu Hen before, but the latter's understanding was not comprehensive enough, so they did not talk about it in detail. Naturally, the Supreme Headquarters had the most in-depth understanding of the situation. Jing Lun then gave a brief account of the hundreds of years of war. It was only now that Yang Kai learned that the human race had regained not just the dozen or so original Great Territory battlefields, but an additional 200 or so Great Territories. However, Yang Kai immediately felt that something was wrong. Even if the human race had produced several Ninth Order Masters and many Eighth Order Masters in the universe furnace, increasing their strength greatly, that shouldn't have been sufficient to produce such outstanding results. With his previous understanding of the Black Ink clan's background and forces, Yang Kai initially believed that the battle between the two sides would still be raging on the various Great Territory battlefields. After all, the Black Ink clan must now have dozens of pseudo-royal lords, so it should have been impossible to reclaim so many Great Territories even though there were quite a number of Ninth Order Masters in the human race. Yang Kai didn't understand until he heard Jing Lun mention Mo Na Yi. The Black Ink clan retreated to advance, lengthening the human race's battle lines and dispersing their army's strength. Losing 200 or so Great Territories was not a significant detriment to the Black Ink clan, while the human race army had to leave some troops behind to defend these places in order to prevent the Black Ink clan from reoccupying them and cutting off the front lines from the rear. This was open intrigue by the Black Ink clan, but Jing Lun could do nothing even if he saw through their intentions. As a result, he could only try his best to keep the various human race armies steady and not reveal any vulnerabilities. Over the years, the Black Ink clan had taken many actions against the recovered Great Territories. However, they were mostly minor skirmishes that did not make much of an impact and were ultimately quashed by the stationed soldiers. Jing Lun also informed Yang Kai that Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing were finally freed, and his hidden hand had been played. In the Barren Territory, 4 giant spirit gods were currently engaged in a brutal deathmatch. This was not surprising to Yang Kai. The Black Ink clan couldn't keep their trapped Black Ink giant spirit god unused. For them, the power that the Black Ink giant spirit god provided was simply too great. So, once the two sides went to war, the Black Ink clan would find a way to release their trapped deity. Xiao Xiao and Wu Qing's strength was not enough to restrain a master of that caliber, but the hidden hand that Yang Kai left behind happened to be able to counter it. Speaking of which, the great battle in the Barren Territory has caused quite a lot of trouble for the Black Ink clan. A grin appeared on Jing Lun's face. Since the Black Ink clan captured the No-Return Pass, that place has been their foundation. In the past, the Black Ink clan had a large number of troops and resources transported from the No-Return Pass to the front lines on a near-daily basis, but now that the great battle of 4 giant spirit gods has affected the entire Barren Territory, the troops passing through that area often suffer losses from the fallout. Although it's not a significant attrition, in recent years, The Black Ink clan has lost at least 20% of their troops in the barren territory, which has eased some of the pressure on us. Yang Kai couldn't help but raise his brow. There's such a fortunate event. He didn't expect this turn of events. Initially, he only wanted to leave a DA to deal with the trapped Black Ink giant spirit god. However, now he realized that he had stumbled into some additional good fortune. It made sense once he thought about it, though. The battle between giant spirit gods was heaven-shaking and earth-destroying, and as the Black Ink clan's army set out from the no-return pass, they would inevitably have to pass through the barren territory. Anyone caught in the aftermath of such a battle would definitely not have a good end. It was only natural that the Black Ink clan were troubled by this, but since it was a giant spirit god's battle, it was doubtful anyone could intervene. Now, the human race had 12 main armies, but only 6 of them had a Ninth-Order master leading them. Luo Ting he led the Azure Sun Army, Xiangshan the Bloodflame Army, Oyu Yang Lai the Profound Nether Army, Wei Junyang the Lang Ya Army, Xiao Xiao the Soaring Cloud Army, and Wu Qing the Purple Feather Army. The remaining 6 armies were Shocking Thunder, Red Flame, Burning Moon, Twin Instrument, Azure Dawn, and Jade Cicada. Although I had dispatched many divine spirits to assist the latter 6 armies, they are still lacking in comparison to the others, especially the Red Flame Army, which is now in a standoff with the Black Ink clan in the E5 Great Territory. Saying so, Mi Jing Lun pointed his finger casually, and the huge universe chart in front of him suddenly expanded, presenting a map of the void with the E5 Great Territory on it. Not every great territory in the 3,000 great territories had a distinct namesake. Just like High Heaven Territory, it used to only have a code name because there were no powerful sects present, nor did the people inside have the ability to break free from the constraints of their universe worlds. It was not until the star boundary rose to fame, and because Yang Kai was from it, that the territory hosting the star boundary was renamed High Heaven Territory. Similarly, the new Great Territory was also just a code name in the universe chart. However, the Myriad Monsters world in the new Great Territory now had the qualifications to represent it. Perhaps in the future, when the universe chart was updated, the new Great Territory would be christened the Myriad Monsters Territory. Only when a great territory had a powerful great force as a hegemon would it be named after that force. E5 Territory was a barren great territory. Although there were a few universe worlds, there were no second-class great forces. The cultivation of the top masters in the few universe worlds there was not even comparable to that of the star boundary in its early years. Back when the Black Ink clan invaded E5 territory, the living beings in those few universe worlds were almost all butchered. Now, the Red Flame Army had arrived and was fighting for control of this great territory while the Black Ink clan was deploying their troops to resist. Looking at the universe chart, red and black light occupied roughly half of the territory each. The red represented the Red Flame Army, and the black represented the Black Ink clan. The Black Ink clan has clearly been waiting for this moment after giving up so many great territories. We suspect they are preparing a full counterattack against the Red Flame Army. In recent years, the Black Ink clan has been mobilizing their masters to E5 territory, and in the last war, the Red Flame Army was already having a difficult time holding on while suffering many casualties. If we continue like this, without more support, the Red Flame Army won't hold on for much longer. Yang Kai nodded lightly and asked, "Senior brother Mi, do you want me to assume command of the Red Flame Army?" Mi Jing Lun nodded. Originally, we planned to retreat from E5 and redistribute the Red Flame Army into the other 11 if we couldn't hold on. But since you're back, it would be better to hand the Red Flame Army over to you. After Yang Kai pondered about it for a moment, he said, "I don't have any objections, but I have some ideas of my own." Mi Jing Lun gestured for him to continue. "Please share." "When I led Profound Nether in Profound Nether territory, there were no Black Ink clansmen who dared to cause trouble. If I take over the Red Flame Army, obviously the Black Ink clan won't dare to provoke us anymore. In this way, wherever Red Flame goes, the Black Ink clan will surely retreat and avoid it. Even so, if we can't kill more Black Ink clan masters, it would be meaningless to occupy more great territories." Mi Jing Lun nodded and responded, "Our goal now is to kill, especially the pseudo-royal lords. The number of pseudo-royal lords is limited, so if we can kill enough of them, they won't have the capital to fight us anymore. If that's the case, It would be better for me to act alone. Mi Jinglun was momentarily taken aback before considering carefully and then nodded. That's true. Yang Kai taking command of the Red Flame Army would undoubtedly allow it to soar like a dragon diving into the sea, leaving the Black Ink clan no room to act recklessly in front of them. However, managing an army would also be a drag on Yang Kai. If he acted alone, it would undoubtedly be more convenient. Unlike the other Ninth Order masters, Yang Kai was proficient in Tao of Space, so even if he traveled from one battlefield to the next, the amount of time spent in transit would actually be quite small. As the two conversed, the rest of the staff sat quietly to the side, listening in amazement. Among the numerous Ninth Order masters, the person in front of them was probably the only one who could laugh and treat the Black Ink clan as if they were insignificant. But everyone knew that this was not arrogance but extreme self-confidence. Marshall Peak. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.